So with one regular season game left for most teams, let's talk about how the breakdown for the college football playoff ought to work, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I'm not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about how the college football playoff selection committee might take a look at what is probably going to happen. So let's just go for a second and assume chalk here, right? Chalk meaning everybody that we think is going to win will win, and then take a look at how things stand at the end of that. So that would be assuming LSU gets a win against Texas A&M this weekend and then beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. Okay? Just assume that for a second. And then let's assume Ohio State beats Michigan and then beats the Big Ten West sacrificial lamb, if you will, and they go undefeated. So that's one, that's two. All right. Number 3, we get Clemson to beat South Carolina for the South Carolina State Championship. They beat the ACC Coastal Sacrificial Lamb, whether it be Vodtech or Virginia, and they get in the playoff, go undefeated. And then at the 4th spot, with the loss to Georgia, it gets interesting, right? Because we're assuming that Georgia would lose that game and give them 2 losses. College Football Playoff Selection Committee has never put a 2-loss team in. Don't see any reason as to why Georgia would get in, especially without a conference championship. Okay. We know that Alabama needs to beat Auburn, and they need to make it feel like Auburn is the best team that they played all year. It's actually a thing that Nick Saban said on Monday, that Auburn is the best football team they played all year, which is not only shade to LSU, it is a bold-faced lie. But that's what you need to say right now if you want to do something other than play in the Sugar Bowl and you're Alabama, and they do without a conference championship. And might I add, with one top 25 win, if you're counting Texas A&M, and the College Football Playoff Selection Committee probably is not. All right? So then we get to Utah, because Utah could end up winning its final game and then go into the Pac-12 championship game and beat Oregon. However, most folks believe that Oregon is going to bounce back from its loss to Arizona State, beat Oregon State, and then beat Utah. So we'll settle that in a second. But for the sake of argument, let's just go with Utah, who still has the stronger resume of the two. Conference championship, 1 loss, will have beaten a ranked Oregon team. Top 15, we think. Okay? Then we get to Oklahoma, who will have to beat a ranked Oklahoma State team and then a ranked Baylor team for the second time in less than a month. And then they would have a Big 12 championship, right? Outside of that, we could talk about Minnesota, perhaps coming out of the Big Ten West, and perhaps beating Ohio State, and we can get that for a second. But if everything just went the way that we think it's going to go, Oklahoma's resume would be better than that of Alabama's and better than that of Utah's when you're talking about quality opponents, quality wins, who did you play, where did you play them. Oklahoma was the first team, and right now the only team, to knock off undefeated Baylor. Okay? Oklahoma would have also beaten a ranked Oklahoma State team. Now, whether or not the committee really takes into account Spencer Sanders versus Drew Brown, we'll see. They seem not to care that Tylan Wallace, who might be the best wide receiver in football, didn't play. They still ranked him. Okay? So they're assuming that Drew Brown doesn't affect that either. Chuba Hubbard is the reason, as you believe in that offense, and that defense has played particularly well as Oklahoma State has reeled off 4 straight. Okay? And then we can start to take a look at the rest of the field, right? Because Utah would have a ranked win against a good Oregon team in a Pac-12 championship, and it would only have one other ranked win that we think is good. And you might even say now their loss to USC looks a lot better, as USC has finished its season going 8-4 with a great win against UCLA, and with losses to teams that you would have expected them to take losses to and wins that you expected them to get. Okay? So for resumes, we're talking about how many ranked opponents has Utah beaten and who did they beat. And I would assume right now that Oregon is going to be ranked ahead of Baylor going into the Pac-12 championship game, going into the Big 12 championship game. That will be interesting because I think if Baylor manages to go into that game ranked ahead of Oregon, it's going to help Oklahoma's chances and vice versa, right? But even so, unless Oregon's a top 10 team, and they might be. They might be with 2 losses. Florida was. We can make the argument that Utah would have to beat up on essentially Oregon so badly that a narrow win by Oklahoma over Baylor would be enough to vault them into the college football playoff spot that we don't think that Alabama would get without a conference championship and without beating more than one ranked opponent. That would be Auburn at this particular juncture. Now, one of the reasons that I love college football is one of the reasons that everybody loves college football, which is chaos. We play the games for this reason. We let the teams decide as much as we can. And for the folks that love the 4-team playoff, think 4 is enough, they're going, yeah, because we only have 3 teams that are actually worthy of being in this playoff. To which I'm going, whatever, man, because the nature of sport is winning and losing. The toughest thing in college football to do is go undefeated, and I acknowledge that. But if you're that good, you should be able to beat up on everybody at any time. And I don't want to hear any more argument about how this is going to work with schools and how this is going to work playing 16, 17 games a year. First, I would tell you that all the kids that play in these games are going to be pros, so they get used to playing 16-game schedules. Clemson just has to win 15 in a row to go undefeated. They did it last year, right? The other thing that I would mention is somehow the FCS manages to pull off a 2014 playoff, and the kids go to school, and it doesn't ruin Christmas. There's a way to do this if everybody wants to do it. But if chaos were to ensue, and I am a fan of chaos, what would happen is Clemson would lose to South Carolina. We don't think it's going to happen, but it could. Ohio State would not lose to Michigan, but might lose to a Minnesota or a Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, right? And then we would get perhaps Alabama to beat Auburn, to be in the hat, throw their hat in the ring. And then we get Oregon to beat Utah, but that would mostly cancel out the Pac-12 champ. So maybe we need Utah to beat Oregon just to keep this as chaotic as possible, right? Baylor avenges its loss to Oklahoma, right? And then we get to begin to start to talk about maybe Va Tech takes a loss or Virginia takes a loss to Clemson. And then we really have to make the committee do some work. And that's kind of what I think a committee is supposed to do. If you have a bunch of teams that look equal on resume, then you need somebody to tell you who's better or who's not. But we wanted the computers involved in the Bowl Championship Series because we wanted to take bias out of it, and we wanted to have the human element only tell us what the eye test might tell us. But the eye test is proven to just be, okay, that we think that team has the most NFL draft picks on it, so we're going to put them in the playoff like they did with Alabama in 2017, and Alabama made them all look good. What I'm saying is there's still so much to play for. But the only way that you can actually continue to whittle the field and to wean the field is to win your game. Because Oklahoma essentially won a game of survivor last week with its 28-24 win against Texas Christian in a game that they totally could have lost. And Oregon took an L to Arizona State, Jaden Daniels, and a true freshman quarterback to eliminate themselves, right? So that's why people are saying, playoff game. Like Penn State had a playoff game. They lost it to Ohio State, and so forth and so on. I think both of the arguments look really good at this time of year with this particular assortment of games and assortment of teams left, but I would still love to see a playoff. However, if chalk holds out and you put Oklahoma's resume up against Utah's resume, up against Bama's resume, you're probably going to lean with Oklahoma. All right? So if you're an OU fan, just go win, baby. I mean, that's what it is. And if Oklahoma doesn't get in, the rules are the same for everybody. If you go undefeated, especially in a Power 5 conference, you're going to get into this thing called the playoff. Don't lose. I just think that there should be a system in place to where it doesn't matter if you lose a game. It only matters if you win in this tournament. All right. That's it for me. Deuces.